sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Do you have a sense of why you're sitting here? Why Utah was willing to trade you?
That's a good question. I think, obviously losing Quinn. Quinn was there for 8 years, was a big part of what we were doing. There's sometimes the window for winning is not always big. And then for us in Utah, that's kind of what happened. I think the organization felt like that. We had maybe passed that window that we had over the last few years. And I think they're still obviously going to be a very competitive team, but they just felt like with all the assets that they could get with me, that it was better for them to go that way.
Doogie. A little good question point there for Doogie.
Only 1 point?
Did you fist pump it?
Yeah, it's 1 point. How about extra credit? Don't I get at least double points for that?
Why would you get double points? He gave you a good
Rudy
question.
Gobert.
Oh, because he's tall. Because he's tall, you get a.
We don't give out our own. Yeah, you don't get points for us.
Well, English is not his first language, and so you broke the language barrier there too. Oh, maybe it's a 1.5.
Oh, right, come on. Come on. I've gotten good questions from players. I don't get a 1.5.
If you get one from Kirk Cousins, we'll give you 2 points. Okay.
But see, here's the thing.
That's your challenge.
Kevin O'Connell, it's like every other question.
Yeah,
that's
true.
a good question. Rudy Gobert only said good question. He took 9, 10, 11 questions yesterday? Yeah. He only said good question 1 time. That to me is worth extra credit. I'm biased, admittedly, but I should get at least a 1.5.
And that's because you had the guts to basically say, if I may reinterpret your question, why did the Jazz send you packing? Are you useless at this point?
Have you gone over the age cliff? Talk about the age cliff.
People hate this trade, Rudy. Why are you going to justify this nonsense being a good deal?
I will give my colleague Joe Schmidt credit for asking Connolly a very direct question about this move defining his legacy. Regardless of whatever else takes place over the next few years, he has the 5-year contract. But this will define, Tim Connolly, how we judge him. Years out, right? We'll look back at this week and say, okay, did Tim Connolly succeed or fail as president of operations here?
Yeah. I love Joe coming in because he does this. Joe's been around for 40 years in the local media, and he loves to ask the big sort of the legacy type questions. We need Joe to come in there and ask the big headline legacy questions. By the way, this is Reckless Speculation Thursday.
Yes, happy Reckless Speculation Thursday.
Yeah, to all who celebrate. Darren Doogie Wolfson, he is from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department and the Scoop Podcast, inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams. And Judd brought this up in our little email exchange, and I think it's worth exploring here, that the Timberwolves clearly felt, Tim Connolly was here for 15 minutes and makes this massive franchise-altering trade, right? And Chris Finch made a couple points about how they didn't want this thing to go backwards. The Western Conference is pretty damn good, 1 through 11, 1 through 12. We've talked about it on this show, and you've got the Blazers are going to get better. The Lakers are probably going to find a way to get better, and the Pelicans. So you might not be able to run it back and expect to just make the playoffs or make the play-in again. So how much was there a fear of moving backwards if they didn't do something big this summer, Doogie?
I don't think it was a great fear, Phil. I really don't. They could have run this thing back pretty much status quo. They weren't missing the play-in. Now, maybe the ceiling was the play-in. Maybe the ceiling was the 7 seed again, having to open on the road again in the playoffs if you advance beyond the play-in. But I don't sense there was this great fear. Tim Connolly has that 5 years of security. He could have waited this thing out, maximized maximum cap space 1 summer from now. And I can promise you, Phil, that was bandied about at Mayo Clinic Square. They had many conversations about whether, hey, should we go all in right now or do we wait 1 summer from now? Ultimately, they decided a player of Gobert's caliber just doesn't hit the market often, and the time was now to strike. They also had a good sense that Gobert really, really wanted to be here. I've said, I don't know if I would have had the cojones, right? The onions, the balls to execute that trade. But I understand the Wolves doing it.
I love how
so
you
I'm
worked
not
your
going to
way.
rip
You
them.
worked your way up to the word there. The watermelons, the cantaloupes, the balls.
You're ballsy.
Like they knew that Gobert, he wanted to be here. I'm not convinced because I said I would have waited out the KD situation in Brooklyn. Not that Brooklyn is any closer to a trade today than they were days ago. Brooklyn may stretch this thing out into September, into October. Who knows? Maybe even into the season, right? The regular season, mid-October into November. But I would have maybe waited out that situation just to see. But I feel confident telling you, KD, not real interested in being here in Minnesota. Rudy Gobert wanted to be here.
I heard two things, and Phil, if you would be so kind as to sound the reckless speculation sound. Here's what I heard.
Reckless speculation.
One is, Dukes, I think you're right. I don't think that there was a fear, but I do think that there is no longer, and this probably starts at the top with the two guys who are prepared to buy the team in waiting. So, I think that there is an inherent pressure, not that people are going to lose their jobs like Finch or Conley for sure, but that they want to win now. And I think what they did, and if we reverse engineer this entire thing, I think what they did was they watched the playoffs back against Memphis. And we all said, what happens in the playoffs with Gobert if a team goes small? And they said, yeah, but if we play that series again like we did with that same team, we're screwed again. And the reality is, if you go back and watch that series, the Wolves should have won it. The Wolves blew an opportunity. If they had the right personnel structure, at least that series, they win. The second thing that I heard, and this is like trying to read between the lines of what they are explaining without saying it. We all said, we think D'Lo is probably gone. I think they said, okay, if we do that, we're not going to maximize his return. So what can we potentially do to maximize him now? And Gobert helps a lot with him as well. So I think that this is very strategic. And I think part of the thing that we have to rewire our Wolves brains on is this. I don't think the patience of the apple pie days from my wife, enjoy a slice of pie, and how about some basketball as well. I think those days are gone. I think that there is a business, and it's strategic, a business reason, arena, season tickets, why this team feels a pressure to be as good as possible now in what is an incredibly competitive sports market.
Yes, I agree with that. Don't leave out the lasagna, by the way.
Do not sleep on the lasagna. Okay.
Tim Connelly.
Did you say apple pie? Because, the pecking order of Becky's foods is probably lasagna.
I was trying to use a quick example.
Burgers and potato salad.
I would say,
yeah. So just to be clear.
Although she's pro dessert. I think it's more, I'm not necessarily sure it's apple pie. It might be.
That was Becky's apple pie.
Lemon meringue. Lemon meringue.
I can dig on that. If somebody wants that
Pumpkin?
scoop, I'll reach out to Glenn in a little bit. In
Kill
fact,
it, Phil.
Carrot cake?
Glenn wasn't there yesterday. A-Rod wasn't there. Mark Laurie wasn't there, which surprised me a little bit. So I would like to track down, at least one, if not multiple of those people. So that's on my to-do list, although I'm taking a few days off here over the next few. But I definitely want to track down at least one, if not multiple. So if I track down Glenn, I'll ask him what Becky's go-to dessert is. But, yeah, Mark Laurie, Alex Rodriguez, much like they drove the bus entirely on Tim Connelly landing here, they were very pro adding Rudy Gobert. I don't want to necessarily paint it as they drove the bus on this. Connelly drove the bus. In fact, I think Connelly thought about trying to swing for the fences on Gobert if he was still in Denver.
I was just going to bring that up.
Gobert with Jokic.
That's an interesting. As quickly as this came together, it's like he takes the job, and it was like the framework of this trade was being discussed immediately. And a couple people hit me up on Twitter and said, "Do you think he was thinking about this?" Actually, no. Did John Hollinger write about it? Somebody wrote about this too. But yeah, would this have happened in Denver? Interesting.
I don't know if the Cronkies would have given Connelly permission to go deep into the luxury tax if Denver was willing to part. Now, they probably would not have had to part with Jamal Murray, so I think they probably could have put together the pieces. But did they have the money to make it work? But I guess you would have looked at Will Barton's contract, Monty Morris. You look at those two guys, Calvin Booth moving on from those guys. But I don't think Connelly would have been against moving on from those guys. So they probably could have found a way to make it work. Because if Utah was willing to to negotiate with Minnesota, clearly they would have negotiated with Denver if Denver was offering the most. But yeah, Judd, that is interesting on the new arena angle, season ticket base angle. At some point here pretty quick, after next season ticket prices are going to rise significantly, right? So, there is a revenue aspect to all this. There is a long play aspect to all this, in addition to the short-term play that they feel like they are now a top 4 team in the Western Conference, that they will far exceed 46 wins. When I say far, if you get to 51, 52, 53, that to me is far exceeding 46, because that 50 win threshold is a pretty significant number to hit. So if you get over that, to me, that's a pretty sizable leap. But they feel like they have assembled a top 4 team in the Western Conference. Let me also add something I gleaned after the press conference, talking to some people close to Gobert that were there. There were 4 teams total that had serious talks with Utah, the Wolves being one of the 4. So then we wonder, who were the other 3? I couldn't get the person to crack on who the 3 were. I tried. But, I think it's pretty safe to say Chicago was one. Reckless speculation. I do wonder about Toronto. I wonder about Atlanta. There's a few other teams I wonder about, but I'm not sure anybody was willing to offer what the Wolves offered. That's why it was a very easy yes for Danny Ainge. And I think there's truth to what Rudy Gobert said, that they had capped out in Utah, right? They tried. And if they brought back Gobert with now this young coach Hardy, I don't think, Quinn Snyder was the problem, put it that way. Quinn Snyder is a very good coach. He'll be a coach again in this league as soon as 2 seasons from now. He'll take next season off and be a coach somewhere in 2 seasons, maybe San Antonio after Greg Popovich retires. But Quinn Snyder is a really, really good coach. Talk to people in the league. So, Quinn Snyder wasn't the problem. The personnel was more the problem. They had hit their peak, and so I get it from Utah's standpoint. But, hey, for the Wolves, swing for the fences. Because if this doesn't work, I brought this up yesterday with Judd, Phil. If this doesn't work, you know what this sets up? A Karl Anthony Towns trade in 2 to 3 years, where you could recoup your 25 first-round pick if need be, or certainly your 27 and 29, although 29 is top 5 protected. But point is, you could recoup multiple first-round picks plus some young assets, legitimate talent, if this thing doesn't work and you ultimately move Karl Anthony Towns.
I'm glad you brought this up. There's a couple interesting angles here off what you just said, but a quick shout out to our friends, Declan, at Aquaside during these summer months, helping to keep your lakeside area clean and free from gunk.
That's right. I was jumping off the dock in Shell Lake, Wisconsin over the last week and over the 4th with the summer of Surly. And when I hit the ground there, when I ran off the dock, number one, my ankle stayed intact, so that was good. But also, I did not. Oh God, my ankle! I did not step in any algae or that nasty lakeweed, because there's nothing worse. Nothing would kill a vibe on a beautiful summer day than stepping on that lakeweed or algae. And Aquaside can help kill that lakeweed and algae if it's in your lake home. It's a safe product, too. It's registered with the EPA and the DNR. It's Aquaside pellets. It's do-it-yourself. They'll walk you through how to use it. You can visit them in White Bear Lake if you're in the Twin Cities, but you can also just go to aquaside.com to learn more. Aquaside.com to learn more.
A shout out to our friends, too, at Equity Partners. So we had a chance a few months ago to meet a friend of Purple Daily, Ryan, loyal listener of SKOR North and Purple Daily, and got talking about his business, Equity Partners, which makes the selling process 100% hassle-free if you're in the market to sell. And one of the biggest pains is trying to line up selling your house with timing of buying a house and then any remodeling work that needs to be done to maximize the value of your home. Well, with the WeHab program, Equity Partners will partner with you to fix up your home before you put it on the market, anything from simple fixes to full remodels. And you can move before you sell. You can put offers in on your next home, non-contingent on the sale of your home, which is huge. EquityPartnersMN.com to find out more. EquityPartnersMN.com. Okay, Doogie. So
Reckless speculation.
I think people are making the national media is just hammering this trade up and down, and it's kind of fascinating to just hear one person after another line up to bash the Timberwolves. But 2 things off that. Number one, they didn't have to do this. Tim Connolly, no one was going to say, all right, Tim Connolly, you took the job. You have to make a big move right now. So he's choosing to do this for strategic reasons. Chris Finch's career wasn't going to be put in jeopardy. He's not going to greenlight this from a coaching standpoint if they don't believe this can work. And so why would they do this if they don't think it can work? These are smart people. But then, let's say it quote unquote doesn't work. What's the worst case scenario? I think they're still going to make the playoffs on a regular basis. And so if it doesn't work, it's going to be early exits, right? Like the Jazz, first round exit, second round exit. But if that's the worst case scenario and Anthony Edwards spends ages 21 through 25 in the playoffs, taking lumps, and then emerging into his prime on a max contract in 2025, 26, is that the worst thing? The doom and gloom stuff is puzzling to me. Like, the worst case scenario is you're in the playoffs now, winning 50 games, and Anthony Edwards is playing relevant basketball as he grows into his prime.
And Anthony Edwards is not turning down the max contract he'll get offered coming off his rookie deal. Like, guys just don't turn that down. So Anthony Edwards will be under Wolves team control for many, many more years. I've had the Herschel Walker comp in my Twitter mentions often. Phil, I saw you tweet about it. I think Vikings fans forget, because they fixate the Cowboys winning multiple Super Bowls. I think they forget that the Vikings were not a train wreck after the Herschel Walker trade. They were actually pretty good for many years, certainly competitive, right? So I guess the comp would be, as you're laying it out, first round exit or second round exit. And hey, second round exit, we're talking about a franchise that has been to the second round of the playoffs one time in its existence, right? So we will happily take a second round playoff series here.
On the Walker front too, and I want to ask your interpretation of this as well, Dukes. The one thing that people completely forget is this. Jerry Burns basically told GM Mike Lynn at the time, don't do that. And Mike Lynn's like, no, it's a splash move. It's a splash move. And Burnsy, God bless him, ran a West Coast offense, which is not north-south. And Herschel was a north-south guy. So basically what you got was a running back who had certainly star potential, but didn't fit the system. Finch mentioned yesterday, in fact, I think Connolly said this, that as soon as they started to talk about Gobert, Finch went to the whiteboard and basically started to come up with plans. And as a hoops junkie, what do you think Finch can possibly do with the Gobert-Towns tandem that we haven't seen that's going? Because, I think we just think it's two bigs. It's not going to work. Twin Towers don't work now. Chris Finch is a very smart basketball guy. So clearly he's got ideas. What's your guess about what the ideas are to make both Gobert and Towns, when they're on the floor, not only coexist, but coexist really successfully?
Yes, I'll get to that. Great job painting the Jerry Burns picture outside of him using clean language, right? There may have been a mother effer, a couple other
I wish we could.
Choice words
Can't do that.
Delivered to Mike Lynn. But yeah, I mean, you're right about where Burnsy sat. I think you're going to see, and Finch brought this up, and when he said it, this was after the press conference, a few of us in a tiny circle, lobbed him some questions. He brought it up, and I had to pause for a second. Then I thought, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, he's not lying to us. The Wolves had 5 for the season lob dunks last year.
Wow.
Rudy Gobert, by himself in Utah, had over 80 lob dunks.
Interesting.
So we will see more lob dunks than we've seen. I'll tell you this much. Twin Towers can work, Judd. Mobley and Allen in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Look at Boston last season playing Al Horford. Robert Williams together a lot. Finch was in New Orleans. Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins. Finch was in Denver. Nurkic and Jokic. We can see this work. But certainly the pick and roll, Gobert's as good a roller as there is in the league, right? So, you're going to see D'Angelo Russell succeed in the pick and roll with Gobert. That's one thing instantly. And you're going to see guys be able to gamble more on defense, right? When you've got Gobert protecting the rim, the best rim protector in the league, you'll be able to take some more chances on the perimeter. So those are a couple things that instantly come to mind. You're going to see, the pick and pop, with Cat taking more three-pointers. I'm sure we'll see Cat taking more three-pointers on the pick and pop. where Gobert is going to be closer to the rim and Cat pops out to the 3-point line. But like from a strategic standpoint, I think about D'Lo's last year in Brooklyn with Jared Allen. Think about the way those two play. Go back and watch the video. It's on YouTube. Go back and watch D'Lo with Jared Allen that final year in Brooklyn. Then envision Gobert doing some of those same things. I'm not suggesting Gobert and Allen have the same offensive skill set, but Gobert is capable of doing a lot of what Jared Allen can do. Like, just go watch that video. That'll be Gobert with D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, and Dukes, I know that Gobert is not a guy that you're going to run a lot of offensive sets for. He's not going to create his own shot. Like, Karl Anthony Towns can kind of do whatever he wants. He can dribble, drive, crossover, step back. He's this unicorn, and that's not Gobert. But what Gobert can do offensively is score 15 or 16 points on 8 shots. And basketball is a game where it's a clock that runs out. You have a finite number of shot opportunities. And so from an efficiency standpoint, he's one of the most efficient offensive players in the league. Not one of the best, but in terms of how many points he produces on how many shots or how few shots he takes, whether it's lobs or cleanups or, rolling to the basket on pick and roll. You get to start each game with 15 points on 8 shots. That's great for the offense.
But, Finch is going to find some different ways. He brought this up yesterday. Like, there are certain things he's going to ask Gobert to do that Gobert didn't do in Utah. Like, he feels like Gobert,
get to the third round of the playoffs.
Top of the key. Maybe, some sets, start with Gobert top of the key before he gets down low. So, trust me, you can look at the blueprint of how Quinn Snyder used Gobert in Utah, but that's not going to be exactly how Chris Finch is going to use Gobert here.
Yeah. God dang it, I'm so excited. We gotta wait 3 months now.
You should be. And hey, I get the pessimism that in the playoffs, how are you going to make this work? Whoever you play in the playoffs, they'll put 5 shooters on the floor. How the heck is Gobert going to defend the 3-point line? And I understand some of those questions. I also think the personnel here is different than what Gobert had in Utah, that the personnel he was around. The other 4 guys on the floor in Utah, if you go back to even the Warriors series from a few years ago, but certainly the Clippers series of a couple years ago, the Dallas series this past year, some of, the issues Utah had, not all on Gobert. Some of his teammates had something to do with that too.
Yeah, yes.
Right? So it's different personnel here. So, and guess what, by the way? If you're playing, you name the team, if you're playing Dallas in the playoffs come late April, early May, Dallas has 5 shooters on the floor, then Cat has to take advantage on the offensive end.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? Then Cat should have a clear advantage on the offensive end, right? And you'll just have to rotate incredibly well. Chris Finch was very direct yesterday after the press conference saying, and you don't make a move like this. I guess maybe this goes without saying, but I'm glad he verbalized it. That the plan is to play Gobert in the playoffs. You didn't make this trade. You're not paying him all this money for him to ride the bench in the playoffs. So they plan on finding a way to make this work with Gobert on the floor a lot come the postseason.
Yeah.
And I know it's obvious, right? You don't make this move and have Gobert on the bench for long stretches come the postseason. But I'm just glad Finch, volunteered that information.
Headline on this episode, Declan: Doogie, Gobert. Wolves plan to play Gobert in playoffs. There it is.
Breaking.
There's the scoop right there.
Could Gobert be benched in playoffs? Question mark.
Let's speculate. All right. Dukes, empty the rest of the scoop bag. What else do you have for us here?
Well, the group chat, the Wolves group chat has been, pretty excited. I can tell you, talking to somebody close to Gobert, I put this on my latest scoop podcast from Sunday, episode 391. But, my sense is I haven't spoken directly with Karl Anthony Towns. I'll make that very clear. But my sense is from those who have, and I heard it again yesterday post-press conference that, he's super excited. But so is Gobert. That's why Gobert, he legitimately wanted to be here over those other options. And, again, outside of Chicago, I feel pretty good about suggesting Chicago. Outside of Chicago, I don't know who else it was, but he felt hey, with Cat, with Ant, as good as the complementary pieces in Chicago would have been, Levine, DeRozan, but he felt with Ant, with Cat specifically, Gobert was in some ways sick of competing against Cat, figuring, hey, the Wolves are on the upswing here in Utah. If we want to do something, we'll probably have to deal with Minnesota for the next few years. That's a really tough battle for me why not join forces with him? And my sense is Cat felt the same way, that battling Gobert was a bear. So why not team up, and hey, like, we don't protect the rim. We're not a good defensive rebounding team just based on last year's numbers. Like, why not get the best rebounder, best rim protector in the league? He can only make me better. So I know Cat is pretty darn excited. Should we transition to the Vikings? Eddie Goldman off the board to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm told the Vikings kicked the tires on the former Chicago Bears interior defensive lineman. That just points to, I still think, as we head toward the start of training camp, July 26th, now 19 days away, that I would not be surprised whatsoever if the Vikings add some big body interior of the defensive line.
Love it.
Sue remains an option, correct?
Yeah,
He's still out there.
I mean, I think I spewed it to you guys sometime in the last week that, it remains to be seen if the Vikings actually do this, but the Sue camp firmly believes a Vikings offer is coming. Now, whether Sue says yes, he may have multiple offers, right, by the time training camp starts. So he may ultimately choose to go elsewhere. He may ultimately choose not to play, but there is a belief that a Vikings offer will come. Okay. It hasn't come yet, but that it will come.
Interesting.
Okay, all right. There he is.
Reckless speculation.
Darren Doogie Wolfson, 5 Eyewitness News, the Scoop podcast, and right here on Mackey and Judd a couple days a week as well. Inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams. Bye, Doogie.
Thanks, Doogs.
Bye, boys.
Good stuff, man.
Thanks,
all right.
Asking the tough questions.
Asking the good questions.
Rudy, why? Yeah, it was a great question. Why were you chased out of a place where you were at home for so long?
Do you feel like they didn't want you anymore in Utah? Why didn't they want you anymore in Utah?
Obviously, they didn't want you there. How does that feel to be kicked out?
Talk about your falling out in Utah.
I love it. I just love it.
Talk about getting booed off the court in the
You
playoffs.
and Quinn Snyder were chased out of a place that you got to the playoffs year after year. Why was that, Rudy?
Just ask. That's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah.